So you just made one of the biggest decisions of your life. You decided that you want to become a nurse in Canada or the United States of America. But there are so many different terms: LPN, ADN RN, BSN RN. What do these all mean? What are the difference between them? Which one is going to pay you more, give you more options? Will you regret becoming an LPN if ever you decide to do so? I'm going to give you all the information that you need to make an informed decision that will not only help you become a nurse, but that'll help you graduate nursing school feeling satisfied with the decision that you made. What is up, you guys? Welcome back to the channel. For those of you who are new to the channel, my name is Kiara, and on this channel we talk about nursing, beauty, lifestyle, and content creation. As you saw in the title of the video, today we're going to be talking about how you can make an informed decision and choose the best nursing route for you, whether that's becoming a licensed practical nurse or a registered nurse with an associate's degree in nursing or a bachelor's in science of nursing. I've been a licensed practical nurse here in Canada for the past 5 years and recently got accepted into my LPN to BSN bridge, meaning that I'm going to be starting my BSN journey very soon. And I've also gotten my full equivalency done in the United States, allowing me to write my NCLEX. Now, I did have the intention of writing my NCLEX because I had a job offer in San Francisco, California, where I was gonna go work, but then I got accepted into my BSN program and decided to not write the NCLEX since I knew that I was gonna be stuck here for another 2 years. So I think that I'm the perfect person to not only give you valuable information, but non-biased information that'll not only help you become a nurse, but that'll help you graduate nursing school feeling satisfied with the decision that you made. So without further ado, let's get straight into it, starting off with the first level of nursing, or entry-level nurse, most commonly called a licensed practical nurse. Now, you may hear of LPNs referred to as LVNs, or licensed vocational nurses, in the state of Texas and California, or RPN, registered practical nurse, in the province of Ontario here in Canada. Now, if you are deciding to go for an LPN program in the United States of America, typically this is going to take you about 12 months or a year. I have heard of a few programs that are as short as 10 months and some that are as long as 16 months, but on average seems to be roughly 12 months. Now, if you're choosing to study in Canada, it's going to take you a little longer to become a licensed practical nurse. Now, although there are some programs that are as short as 16 or 18 months, the average to become a licensed practical nurse or registered practical nurse here in Canada seems to be roughly 24 months or 2 years. Now, let's talk about RN ADN. These are registered nurses who have an associate's degree in nursing, and if you choose to go this route in the United States, on average it's going to take you roughly 2 years. I've heard of some very rare programs that are as short as 18 months, but I'm just gonna say 2 years since that seems to be the average across the board in the United States. Now, if you want to become an RN ADN here in Canada, it's very important to note that this is only possible to do in one province of Canada. Most provinces, if all provinces actually except for this one province, will require you to have a bachelor's degree in order to be able to practice with the title of a registered nurse. So if you want to get your RN ADN, you will have to go through the province of Quebec, which is the province that I'm from, and this is going to take you 3 years to do at a CJEP. This is not like a community college where you would do your LPN program. This is a higher level college, and in Canada there is a difference between a college and a university. Colleges usually offer skilled trades programs or things like paramedic, RN ADN, and then you have all the BSN, bachelor, master's, PhD programs at a higher institution or university. But if you are an international who has not studied in French, it is very important to note that you are going to have to do a proficiency exam in French parce qu'on parle français ici au Québec. Now, let's talk about the work options and what the difference really is between these 3 levels of nursing, because don't all nurses kind of just do the same thing? That is what you would think, but there are definitely some differences in scope of practice for all 3 levels of nursing, and this goes for both the United States as well as Canada, so I'm not really going to separate for both of them because the same applies to both. As a licensed practical nurse, the main difference between you and an RN is that you are mainly going to be taking care of patients who are stable. You are not going to be taking care of extremely sick patients. You are going to be taking care of patients or residents with predictable outcomes. There are also some slight differences in the initial assessment. A lot of the times if a patient is coming in for the first time, the initial assessment is going to be done by the RN, meaning that the first person who is going to see the patient is going to be a registered nurse. And once that initial assessment is done by the registered nurse, you can then do the follow-ups. Another thing is care plans, which once again goes with the initial assessment. assessment. Care plan is going to be created by the registered nurse, and then you will then carry out what the registered nurse has decided in the care plan. Another difference may be IVs. And one thing we need to keep in mind is that if you are a registered nurse, no matter where you go in the US or Canada, your scope of practice is pretty much going to be the same. Whereas if you're an LPN, from state to state and province to province, your scope of practice is going to vary. So it is really important for you to kind of go on the Board of Nursing website in the province or state that you want to work in to understand what your scope of practice is in that state, because there can be changes. But for the most part, there are going to be some limitations on IVs. Now, you may be able to do IVs. It may be something that is taught in your nursing program. It may be something that you might have to go and get certified in after your nursing program. But for the most part, LPNs can do IVs, but there are going to be some limitations on the types of IV medications that you can give. If you're in Quebec, you are not allowed to give any IVs with additives. So whether it's a vitamin or a medication, you cannot do it. You can only do electrolytes. Whereas if you go to Ontario and you're an RPN, you can give IV medication. There are some limits on the ones that you can give, but there are some that you can give. And other provinces or states will say no IVs for LPNs at all. And once again, this varies, so you gotta check. So the sicker the patient, the less likely they are going to be assigned to you. Now, as an RN, whether you're an RN, ADN, or BSN, there are no limitations in your scope of practice in terms of nursing. You can do everything from A to Z that falls in the nursing category. This means IV medications, hanging bloods, assisting in intubations, taking care of the sickest patients. There is no limitations for you when it comes to the nursing practice. Now, the main differences between the ADN and the BSN RN is more going to be managerial, admin type of stuff. So if you want to be director of care in a facility or do more of that paperwork side of nursing, then they are more likely to take you if you have a BSN. This is not to say that you can't do it if you have an ADN, but if you are a new grad ADN or a new grad BSN fighting for the same position at a long-term care facility for director of care, they are most likely going to take the one with the BSN over the one with the ADN, because when you are in your BSN program, you do have a little bit more leadership courses that you may not have in your ADN program. But when it comes to working at the bedside, same exact thing for both degrees. Once again, the one with the BSN just has a little bit more classes on leadership, which prepares them for leadership in terms of managing a unit or managing an entire facility. Now let's get into what you really want to know. Money. How much money are you going to be making? Let's start off with LPNs, and I think this is pretty much the same for LPNs in the US and Canada as per my research. If you are an LPN or an RN in the United States, please correct me if I'm wrong, or just let me know how much you were able to make as an LPN down below. So we're going to start off with staff, because we know that agency and travel nursing is a whole different ballgame, which we'll get into in a second. Let's start off with staff. Now, in Canada, we have private facilities and government-owned facilities, otherwise known as public facilities. I'm not sure if it's the same in the United States, but a private facility basically just means that the facility is owned by a company, whereas public facilities are owned by the government. And so, of course, government-paying jobs are going to pay a little bit more. If you are in a private facility as a new grad, you can expect your salary to be as low as $19 or $20 an hour, all the way up to maybe $27 an hour maximum, depending on the amount of experience that you have. Now, if you're working in a public facility, such as a CHSLD here in Quebec, or assisted living facility, where patients are a little bit heavier, you can expect to make anything between $28 to $32 an hour, maybe $36 an hour if you have tons of education. But if you're anything between new grad or 5 years of experience as an LPN, you can expect to make anything between $28 to $32 an hour. You may be wondering, well, why would I want to work in a private facility? Some people prefer to work in a private facility because they are a lot less stressful. Because of the limitation on the equipment that they have, they are a lot less likely likely to take sicker or heavier patients, meaning that in these facilities, such as facilities like or companies like Chartwell, where it is very much hotel-like living with the pool and the gym and everything, these are people who need a nurse on standby in case there is an emergency or they are at the very beginning stage of their Alzheimer's where they need to be reminded to take their medications. So a lot of the times these patients or these residents are extremely stable and they are ambulatory, meaning that they're able to walk, or pivot, meaning that you can kind of help them off of the bed and help them pivot into their chair. So you're not really going to see lifts or things like that because these residents aren't very heavy. So for this reason, some people like to stay in private facilities even though they're getting paid less, because it is a lot less stressful, it is a lot less backbreaking, and it is just way easier. Personally, I love working in private facilities. As an agency nurse, I wouldn't do it as staff anymore. My very first job out of nursing school was at a private facility, and I will leave 2 videos down below of different private facilities that I've worked at. I'm talking indoor pool, indoor gym. It's like working in a hotel, literally. Whereas if you're working in a hospital, once again, these residents and patients are heavier. As an LPN working as staff, you can expect your salary to range from $45,000 to $55,000 across the board, whether you're working private or public. Now, if you're working agency, the average hourly rate for an agency LPN across the board in Canada is $40 an hour, which can go all the way up to $60 an hour. But for the most part, $40 is what you will most commonly see. $50 an hour you will definitely see as well. $60 is if you're really willing to go far out and travel. So we're just going to say $40 to $50 an hour, immediately jumping you to $72,000 a year. So with staff, we were starting off at around $40,000 to $45,000 a year to $55,000, and with agency you're already starting off at $72,000, and if you're making $50 an hour, that automatically jumps you to $90,000 an hour, $90,000 a year. So you could already see the massive difference, the massive pay gap in agency and staff nursing, which is why I personally will never go back to staff unless I really just have no choice. And the pay can go all the way up to $100,000, $110,000, or even $120,000 a year, depending on how much you're able to work. So regardless of which route you choose to go, agency or staff, you can see that you can live a comfortable or way more than comfortable quality of life. Now for RN ADN salary, you can expect your salary to start at around $35 to $36 an hour. And I'm not really gonna talk about RNs in the private sector because a lot of the times the private sector does not require an RN to be there. The DOC will be an RN, and that will be the only RN that they'll have in the facility, because like I said, these facilities do not have very sick patients, and so they do not need to waste their money on an RN when they can just hire an LPN for less pay. This can go all the way up to around $40 an hour, which starts you off at around that $70,000 to $72,000 mark. So you can definitely see that there is a salary difference for RNs and LPNs, but if an LPN is working agency and an RN is working staff, then the LPN could easily make more money than the RN. So there are a lot of different factors that determine how much money you're gonna make. Now, if you are an RN BSN, you're gonna be starting off at that $40 mark, and that could go up to around $45 a mark, which brings you a little bit closer to that $85,000, $90,000 a year. If we're talking about agency, and this goes for both RN ADN and RN BSN, because for the most part you're not going to be hired as an RN BSN to work as a DOC. If you're doing travel contracts as an RN BSN, you're going to be working at the bedside alongside the RN ADN, and in that case your salary is pretty much going to be the same. You may make a little bit of money because you can leverage the fact that you have a higher degree, but for the most part you are going to be paid the same. And this can be crazy. If you're in Canada, you could be making anything between $70 to $100 an hour. $100 an hour is really the high side. You will mostly see the $70,000, $80,000 a year. $80 an hour, sorry. Let's see, $80 an hour times $12,000 per month times 12 months is $144,000 a year. So if you're agency and you're working in Canada, at roughly $80 an hour, you could be hitting that $140,000 a year. Whereas in the US, you could easily be making those hundreds, $120s, $140 an hour. Let's just say $100 an hour on average. It can be more, but let's just say $100 on an hour on average is $15,000 a month, times 12 months is $180,000 a year. So regardless of which one you choose, you're gonna eat, you're gonna be good, you're going to be comfortable. Now let's talk a little bit about why I chose to become an LPN, whether or not I regret becoming an LPN, and why I decided to further my education and go get my RN BSN. Personally, I was in a situation where I just needed to make my money ASAP. Don't get me wrong, I do love nursing and I do love the sciences, but I'm not gonna sit here and look you in your face and tell you that money is not one of the things that influenced me to become a nurse. And that does not take away from the fact that I am a great nurse, and it does not take away from the fact that I treat all of my patients and residents the way that I would want to be treated and that I would want my family to be treated. Living at home just did not allow me to be in the headspace that I needed to be in to be able to do the things that I wanted to do, nursing and non-nursing related, because I do have other endeavors, and I just needed these clarity and the peace of mind to be able to hop onto the things that I wanted to do. And so I needed the stability and the income quickly. And so that is why I chose to go the LPN route. I also did not have the prerequisites, and I did not want to have to spend 6 months to a year in school or in a continuing education facility getting my prerequisite when I could spend that same amount of time and already be halfway through nursing school. I also knew that becoming an LPN wasn't a limitation, meaning that I knew that I had the option to further my education and go back for my RN afterwards as an LPN. What is your situation? Does your situation allow for you to do the longer schooling and spend the money to become an RN? Or do you want to start off with your LPN and then work your way up to your RN afterward? Now, do I regret becoming an LPN? Absolutely not. Becoming an LPN was one of the biggest blessings that has ever happened to me. It allowed me to move out of my city. It allowed me to live in multiple condos that I absolutely loved. It allowed me to travel a ton. It allowed me to gain a ton of experience. I've worked in med surg. I've worked in clinic. I've worked in long-term care facilities. I've worked in so many different places. And if you want to see what my life was like and what it was like for me to work as an LPN or an RPN in Ontario on a med surg unit, I'll leave that video down below so that you can see that as well if that's something that you're thinking about. And it allowed me to make beaucoup bucks, okay? So I do not regret it at all. And now that I'm ready to move on, I was able to apply to a program, get into the programs, God willing, give me the life, the health, and the strength. I am going to be an RN BSN. My LPN to RN bridge is going to take me 2 years, and that is going to cost me roughly $20,000 to do. This can be way more if you're in the United States. I've heard of some LPN programs that are $40,000. So that is going to vary greatly if you are in the US. If you're in Canada and you're an LPN, it should not cost you more than $30,000, maybe $40,000 maximum, depending on the school you choose to go to become an RN. My LPN program costed me $800, my uniforms and my books and my stethoscope included. To invest $800 in 2 years into something that can make you $100,000, $110,000, $120,000 a year if you're willing to put in the work is definitely a good return on investment. Now, the return on investment is also going to be fantastic for you if you are an RN, but it's all about if you have the money to do it up front, like I said before. So my conclusion is make the decision that is best for you. Each level of nursing is amazing. You are not limited to either one. If you want to get your RN BSN and go for your NP after, you can do that. If you want to get your RN ADN first and go for your BSN and then go for your NP, you can do that. And if you want to start off with your LPN and then do your ADN and then do your BSN and then do your NP, you can do that as well. But regardless, when you graduate and you write your NCLEX, you're going to be a nurse. You're gonna get to the bag. That is a fact. All right, so that is pretty much it for today's video. Make sure to subscribe, like this video, share it with anybody who you know may be wanting to get into nursing and isn't really sure which route to choose. And I'm gonna wrap it up right here. I hope to see you guys in my next one. Let me know what you guys think below, how much you've been able to make regardless of the level of nursing that you've completed, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.